Captain Marcus Chen had seen many impossible things during his 15 years exploring the galaxy's edge, but nothing prepared him for the sight that greeted him in the depths of the ancient Valdorian temple. The massive chamber stretched beyond his helmet's light beam, filled with crystalline formations that hummed with an energy that made his teeth ache. At the center, floating 3 feet above a pedestal of black stone, hung a suit of armor that defied every law of physics he knew. The armor was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Its surface shifted between midnight black and deep purple, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Thin veins of silver light pulsed through the metal like a heartbeat, and the air around it shimmered with heat distortion despite the chamber's frigid temperature. "Sir, you're reading this?" His communications officer's voice crackled through the static that had plagued their equipment since entering the temple. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever that thing is, it's putting out more power than our entire ship." Marcus circled the pedestal slowly, his boots echoing in the vast space. The Valdorians had been extinct for over 10,000 years, but their warnings about this place had survived in the fragmentary records of a dozen different species. Every translation said the same thing. The armor was forbidden, cursed, impossible for any living being to wear. The expedition's xenoarchaeologist, Dr. Sarah Kim, emerged from behind one of the crystal formations, her scanner beeping frantically. "Marcus, you need to see these inscriptions. They're not just Valdorian. There are warnings here in 15 different languages, some from species that shouldn't have had contact with each other." She led him to a section of the wall where symbols had been carved deep into the stone. Her translation device struggled with the ancient text, but gradually words appeared on her screen. "Listen to this. The armor of the Void Walker was forged in the heart of a dying star, tempered in the screams of reality itself. No being of flesh or energy may claim it, for it was made for one who does not yet exist." "Cheerful," Marcus muttered, but he couldn't take his eyes off the armor. Something about it called to him, a feeling he couldn't shake that it was waiting for something. "What about this part here?" Dr. Kim adjusted her scanner. "That's even stranger. When the impossible ones arrive, when those who should not be claim the stars themselves, only then will the armor find its true bearer. The universe will tremble, and what was forbidden will become inevitable." The third member of their team, engineer Jake Morrison, had been setting up sensor equipment around the chamber. "Guys, we've got a problem. The energy output from that thing just spiked. Whatever it's doing, it's building towards something." Marcus felt it too, a pressure in the air that made his skin crawl. The armor's glow was getting brighter, and the patterns on its surface were moving faster. "How long do we have?" "At this rate of increase, maybe 10 minutes before this whole place comes apart at the seams." Dr. Kim was frantically copying the inscriptions into her datapad. "There's more here, something about a test. Let any who would claim the armor approach the threshold of truth. If they are found wanting, they will cease to exist. If they are worthy but not the chosen, they will be marked but spared. If they are the one for whom it was made, the universe itself will bend to acknowledge them." Great. A mystical trial that could erase us from existence. Marcus looked around the chamber, noting the way the crystals were starting to resonate with the armor's energy. Hairline cracks were appearing in some of the larger formations. "We need to get out of here." But even as he said it, he knew they wouldn't. He couldn't explain why, but something deep in his gut told him this was important. Not just to their mission or their species, but to everything. The feeling was so strong it made him dizzy. "Sir, the exit passage is starting to collapse," Jake reported, his voice tight with worry. "Whatever that energy surge is doing, it's destabilizing the whole structure." Marcus closed his eyes, trying to think. They'd come here following rumors of Valdorian technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Earth's colonies were struggling, constantly under threat from more advanced species who saw humans as upstart primitives. If there was even a chance that this armor could help level the playing field. The inscriptions mention humans specifically, Dr. Kim said suddenly, her voice filled with excitement and terror. Look at this section. It's in an ancient Earth language, but not any that should exist. It's like a hybrid of Sanskrit and Latin that was never developed. She read slowly, her translation software struggling with the hybrid language. When the young species of the third spiral arm reaches for the stars with hands of flesh and hearts of fire, when they face extinction by those who would deny them their place, then shall the armor wake from its slumber. The armor pulsed brighter, and Marcus felt a shock run through him. The patterns on its surface were definitely moving now, swirling in complex spirals that hurt to look at directly. But underneath his fear, he felt something else. Recognition. Like the armor was responding to him personally. It's not just any human, he realized, his voice barely above a whisper. It's waiting for a specific person. You think you're that person? Jake asked, backing away from his equipment as sparks began flying from it. Marcus looked at his reflection in the armor's gleaming surface and saw something that shouldn't be there. For just a moment, he appeared to be wearing the armor, his features sharper, his eyes glowing with the same silver light that pulsed through the metal. I don't know, but I think we're about to find out. The chamber shook violently and pieces of the ceiling began to fall. The armor's glow was now so bright it was painful to look at directly, but Marcus found he couldn't turn away. Something was pulling him toward it, a force stronger than gravity and more insistent than hunger. Marcus, don't! Dr. Kim grabbed his arm. The inscriptions say that anyone who isn't the chosen one will be destroyed. He looked at her, then at Jake, both of them staring at him with fear and hope in equal measure. If I don't try, we're all dead anyway. This place is coming apart, and our exit is blocked. Step by step, he approached the pedestal. Each footfall echoed like thunder, and the air around him began to thicken. The armor hung before him, close enough to touch, radiating power that made his bones ache. Up close, he could see that it wasn't just metal. There were components he couldn't identify, materials that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The threshold of truth, he whispered, remembering Dr. Kim's translation. He reached out with one trembling hand toward the armor's chest plate. The moment his fingers made contact, the universe exploded. Light brighter than a star's core flooded the chamber, and Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond his body. He was suddenly aware of everything, every atom in the temple, every star in the galaxy, every thought of every living being within 1,000 light years. The sensation should have driven him insane, but instead, it felt like coming home. The armor flowed onto him like liquid mercury, covering his body in seconds. But it wasn't just wearing it, he was becoming it, and it was becoming him. His enhanced senses could perceive dimensions of reality that had no names, could see the fundamental forces that held the universe together. And in that moment of transcendence, he understood why the armor had been waiting, and why only a human could claim it. Humans were the only species in the galaxy that refused to accept limitations. Every other intelligent race had reached a point where they stopped growing, stopped pushing boundaries, stopped dreaming of impossible things. But humans? Humans looked at the impossible and asked, why not? The chamber stabilized around him as the armor's power brought the collapsing temple under control. Crystal formations stopped cracking, the ceiling ceased its fall, and new passages opened where none had existed before. Marcus stood at the center of it all, no longer entirely human, but not something else either. He had become something new, something the universe had been waiting for. Marcus? Dr. Kim's voice was filled with wonder and fear. Are you still you? He turned to look at his friends, and when he spoke, His voice carried harmonics that resonated with the fundamental frequency of reality itself. I'm still me, but I'm also something more. And I think I understand what we're really up against out there. The armor had shown him visions of the galaxy's future, possible timelines where humanity was crushed beneath the weight of older, more established powers, but it had also shown him other possibilities, paths where humans not only survived but thrived, becoming shepherds of a new age of exploration and growth. "We need to get back to the ship," he said, and as he spoke, reality bent around his words. The collapsed passage reformed, creating a straight path to the surface. "I have a lot to tell the Admiral." As they made their way out of the ancient temple, Marcus could feel the armor integrating with his body and mind on levels he was only beginning to understand. He was no longer just a starship captain. He had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a human who could challenge the fundamental order of things, and the universe, for the first time in billions of years, was about to change. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, but for Marcus, time had become something fluid and negotiable. The armor didn't just protect him or enhance his abilities, it had fundamentally altered his relationship with reality itself. He could perceive the quantum foam that underlied all matter, could sense the gravitational currents that flowed between stars, and most importantly, could feel the attention of ancient powers turning toward humanity with a mixture of curiosity and alarm. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez had known Marcus Chen for 8 years, had watched him rise through the ranks of Earth's exploration fleet with a combination of brilliant tactical thinking and an almost reckless willingness to take risks. But the man who walked into her briefing room on Luna Station was something else entirely. He still looked like Marcus mostly. Same brown eyes, same carefully groomed beard, same way of standing with his weight slightly forward like he was ready to move at any moment. But there were differences that made her skin crawl. His movements were too fluid, too precise, as if he was dancing to music only he could hear. When he spoke, she could swear she heard harmonic overtones that resonated in her bones. And sometimes, when the light hit him just right, she could see the outline of something that definitely wasn't human armor shimming around his body. "Tell me everything," she said, settling into her chair and trying not to show how much his presence unnerved her. Marcus's report was methodical and complete, but it was the implications that left her struggling to process what she was hearing. According to him, the armor had been created by a species that existed outside normal space-time, designed specifically for a human who could serve as a bridge between the physical universe and something he called the realm of pure possibility. "Admiral, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane," he said, his enhanced voice making the room's air vibrate in ways that weren't entirely pleasant. "The reason every advanced species in the galaxy treats humans like dangerous children isn't just because we're aggressive or unpredictable. It's because they're terrified of what we represent." He stood and walked to the briefing room's large viewport, looking out at the blue-white marble of Earth hanging in the void. Every other species reaches a point in their development where they accept the limits of reality. They find their place in the cosmic order and stay there. But humans, we look at those limits and immediately start figuring out how to break them. Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward, her command training warring with a growing sense that she was in way over her head. "What exactly are you saying, Captain?" "I'm saying that we're not just another species trying to make our way in the galaxy. We're a catalyst. Our very existence threatens the stability of everything these older civilizations have built." He turned back to her, and for a moment she saw something vast and alien looking out through his eyes. "And some of them have decided that the only way to preserve their version of order is to wipe us out completely." The implications hit her like a physical blow. Earth's colonies were already under pressure from the hegemony, a coalition of 12 species that controlled most of the galaxy's prime real estate. Trade restrictions, Territorial disputes and increasingly aggressive inspections of human settlements had been escalating for months. If Marcus was right, those weren't just political maneuvers. They were the opening moves in a war of extinction. "How do you know all this?" she asked. Marcus touched his chest, and she could see the outline of alien technology beneath his uniform. "The armor doesn't just give me power, Admiral. It gives me access to information networks that span the entire galaxy. I can listen in on hegemony communications, access their strategic databases, even tap into their ship's navigation systems." He activated a holographic display in the center of the room, and suddenly they were looking at a three-dimensional map of local space that showed details no human had ever seen before. Red markers indicated hegemony fleets, their positions and strength displayed with perfect accuracy. Yellow dots showed human colonies, looking pathetically small and vulnerable in comparison. "They're not just planning to drive us back to Earth," Marcus continued, his voice grim. "They're planning to sterilize every world we've touched. Make sure there's nothing left of human civilization except a quarantined homeworld that will serve as a warning to any other species that gets too ambitious." Admiral Rodriguez studied the display, her strategic mind automatically calculating odds and possibilities. It was hopeless. Even if humanity could unite every ship and soldier they had, they were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The technology gap was so vast it might as well be infinite. "So what do you propose we do about it?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since he'd entered the room, she saw something of her old friend in his expression. "We do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds, Admiral. We cheat." The armor's power was beyond anything in the known galaxy, but it came with limitations that Marcus was only beginning to understand. He could manipulate reality on a local scale, could bend the laws of physics in small ways, but major changes required what he called consensus, agreement from the universe itself that the change was not just possible, but inevitable. "Think of it like this," he explained as they walked through Luna Station's engineering section. "Reality is like a river. I can redirect the flow, create eddies and currents, but I can't make the water flow uphill. Unless what? Unless I can convince the river that uphill is actually downhill." They stopped in front of the station's main fabrication unit, a massive device that could create anything from starship components to medical equipment as long as you had the raw materials and the proper programming. Marcus placed his hand on the control interface, and the machine immediately began responding to inputs that weren't coming through any visible connection. "The armor interfaces with technology in ways that shouldn't be possible," he said, as the fabrication unit's displays lit up with design schematics unlike anything Admiral Rodriguez had ever seen. "It's showing me how to build things that don't technically exist yet." The device began to work. Exotic matter printers and quantum assemblers working in perfect coordination to create something that looked like a cross between a weapon and a piece of art. When the fabrication was complete, Marcus lifted the device from the chamber. It was roughly the size and shape of a rifle, but it seemed to bend light around itself in impossible ways. "What is it?" Admiral Rodriguez asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "A probability manipulator," Marcus replied casually, as if he hadn't just created something that violated half the known laws of physics. "Point it at something, pull the trigger, and suddenly the most unlikely positive outcome becomes the most likely one." He handed her the device, and she was surprised by how light it felt. The surface was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. "This is impossible. 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you, but the armor has taught me something important about the nature of impossibility." He gestured for her to follow him toward the station's docking bay. "Impossible is just another word for we haven't figured it out yet." What Marcus showed her in the docking bay defied every principle of engineering she'd ever learned. Where there had been empty space that morning, there was now a starship unlike anything in human or alien design. It was sleek and predatory, with curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in motion. The hull was the same midnight black as Marcus's armor, shot through with veins of silver light. "How did you—" she began, then stopped. She was starting to realize that asking how was pointless when dealing with someone who could apparently rewrite reality on a whim. "The ship exists because I need it to exist," Marcus explained, running his hand along the hull with obvious affection. "The armor allows me to manifest things that are necessary for human survival. This ship can outrun anything the hegemony has, can survive in environments that would destroy conventional vessels, and its weapons—" He trailed off, and Admiral Rodriguez saw something that might have been regret flicker across his features. "Its weapons can do things that will make the hegemony reconsider their assumptions about human capability." The implications were staggering. If Marcus could create one ship like this, what was stopping him from creating a fleet? What was stopping him from giving every human colony the tools they needed to defend themselves? "There are rules," he said, apparently reading her thoughts. "The universe allows me to bend reality, but only in service of humanity's survival and growth. I can't create weapons of conquest or tools of oppression. Everything I make has to serve the cause of human freedom and expansion." Admiral Rodriguez looked at the impossible ship, at the probability-manipulating weapon in her hands, at the man who was no longer entirely human, but who still carried humanity's hopes and dreams. "What's your plan, Captain?" Marcus walked up the ship's boarding ramp, which had materialized without any visible controls being activated. "We're going to introduce ourselves to the hegemony properly. We're going to show them that humanity isn't a problem to be solved or a threat to be eliminated." He paused at the ship's entrance and looked back at her. "We're going to prove to them that we're something much more dangerous than they ever imagined. We're the future, Admiral. And the future doesn't ask permission." As Admiral Rodriguez watched the impossible ship prepare for departure, she realized that Marcus was right about one thing. The universe was about to change. Whether that change would save humanity or doom it remained to be seen, but either way, there was no going back. The age of human limitation was over. What came next would reshape the galaxy itself. The hegemony's grand fleet assembled at the edge of human space represented the combined military might of 12 species and 3,000 years of technological advancement. 500 capital ships, each one capable of reducing a planet to molten slag, hung in perfect formation around the massive command dreadnought Eternal Dominance. The fleet's commander, High Admiral Zethkri of the Altarian hegemony, had led campaigns that had crushed 7 different uprising species. He viewed the coming extermination of humanity as routine pest control. That confidence lasted exactly 37 seconds after Marcus Chen's ship dropped out of hyperspace. The vessel that appeared on their sensors defied every principle of known physics. It registered simultaneously as being 300 meters long and infinite in scope, appeared to be made of both solid matter and pure energy, and according to their most advanced scanners, technically didn't exist at all. Worse, it was broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't be possible while transmitting a message in perfect Altarian diplomatic protocol. "Hegemony Fleet Command, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Exploration Corps. I'm here to discuss the terms of humanity's membership in galactic civilization." High Admiral Zethkri's 4 eyes widened in disbelief. The human ship was alone, a single vessel facing down the largest military fleet in recorded galactic history, and its captain was talking about membership rather than surrender. The sheer audacity was almost admirable. "Unknown vessel, you are ordered to surrender immediately for processing. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Marcus's response came through their communications array with harmonics that made the bridge crew's teeth ache. "Admiral, I don't think you understand. I'm not here to surrender. I'm here to explain why the hegemony's current approach to human relations is about to become impossible to maintain. To demonstrate his point, Marcus activated one of his ship's more subtle capabilities. Every screen in the hegemony fleet simultaneously displayed humanity's true history. Their rapid expansion across dozens of star systems, their technological development curve that showed exponential growth rather than the logarithmic plateau every other species experienced, and most disturbing of all, their complete inability to accept any limitation as permanent. Your analysts have been wrong about us from the beginning, Marcus continued, his ship gliding effortlessly through the fleet's weapon-targeting systems as if they didn't exist. You've been treating humanity like another aggressive species that needs to be contained. But we're not just another species. High Admiral Zethkri watched in growing alarm as his fleet's most advanced targeting computers failed to lock onto the human vessel. Worse, his tactical officers were reporting that their weapons systems were registering the ship as a non-valid target for reasons their computers couldn't explain. "What are you?" the Admiral demanded. "We're evolution in action," Marcus replied. "We're what happens when a species refuses to accept that anything is impossible." To prove his point, Marcus began demonstrating capabilities that sent shockwaves through the hegemony's understanding of physics. He caused his ship to exist in 12 different locations simultaneously. He transmitted communications that arrived before he sent them. Most unsettling of all, he began to alter the fundamental constants of physics in small areas around his vessel, showing that even the most basic laws of reality were negotiable in his presence. But it was what happened next that shattered the hegemony's confidence completely. Other ships began appearing throughout the fleet formation. Not human ships, Marcus was still alone, but vessels that matched his impossible design. Each one transmitted the same message. Probability cascade initiated. Human survival probability now approaching certainty. High Admiral Zethkri realized with growing horror that he was no longer looking at one impossible ship, but at hundreds of them. Each one represented a different potential timeline, a different possible outcome of this encounter, but somehow Marcus was making them all real simultaneously. "This is what you never understood about humanity." Marcus's voice came from every direction at once, as if space itself was speaking. "When you back us into a corner, when you threaten our survival, we don't just fight harder, we rewrite the rules of the game entirely." The Admiral's communications officer was frantically cycling through sensor readings, each one more impossible than the last. "Sir, our quantum probability analyzers are showing that every possible outcome of this battle now favors the humans. Not just likely outcomes, all outcomes. It's as if reality itself is ensuring human victory." Marcus's ship moved to the center of the fleet formation. And when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of cosmic authority. "I'm going to offer you a choice, Admiral. You can continue with your plan to exterminate humanity, in which case I will be forced to demonstrate why that's impossible. Or you can acknowledge that the age of hegemony dominance is over and begin negotiations for a new galactic order." "You're one ship against 500, Admiral Zethkri roared, his species' natural aggression overriding his growing fear. "Impossible or not, you cannot defeat this entire fleet." "You're absolutely right," Marcus agreed. "I can't defeat your fleet, but I don't need to." He activated another of the armor's capabilities, one that he'd been saving for exactly this moment. Reality rippled around the hegemony fleet like water, and suddenly every ship was connected to every other ship through quantum entanglement bonds that made them effectively one massive organism. Their individual weapon systems, their shields, their life support, everything was now dependent on the fleet functioning as a single unit. "Now your fleet is a single target," Marcus explained calmly, "and I specialize in rewriting the probability matrices of single targets." With a thought, Marcus altered the quantum uncertainty that governed whether the fleet's unified systems would function properly. The change was subtle. He simply increased the likelihood that critical systems would fail by exactly the amount necessary to disable the ships without killing their crews. Across 500 vessels, weapon systems powered down, shield generators fluctuated, and engine cores entered automatic shutdown sequences. Within minutes, the most powerful fleet in galactic history was floating helplessly in space, completely intact but utterly harmless. "How?" Admiral Zethkri whispered, his voice carrying clearly through the quantum communication network Marcus had established. "Because humans don't accept losing," Marcus replied. "When faced with extinction, we don't find a way to survive. We find a way to make survival inevitable. We've reached the point in our development where we can literally argue with the universe about what's possible and usually win." But Marcus wasn't finished demonstrating humanity's new place in the cosmic order. Using the armor's connection to the fundamental forces of reality, he began to show the hegemony what human space would look like in the coming years. Star systems where the laws of physics had been gently modified to be more hospitable to life. Planets where matter and energy could be shaped by conscious will. Space itself transformed into a medium that could support human imagination rather than limiting it. "This is what we're offering," he said, as visions of an impossible future played across every screen in the fleet. "Partnership in the greatest expansion of consciousness and capability the universe has ever seen. We're not trying to conquer you or replace you. We're inviting you to grow beyond what you thought possible." High Admiral Zethkri stared at the images in fascination and terror. Everything he was seeing violated the fundamental principles that had governed galactic civilization for millennia. But he was also seeing possibilities that no species had ever imagined. Stars that could be sculpted like clay, time that could be redirected like a river, space itself transformed into a canvas for conscious creation. "And if we refuse?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Then you'll be left behind," Marcus said simply. "Not destroyed, not conquered, but isolated in a version of reality that's becoming obsolete. The universe is evolving, Admiral. The question is whether you want to be part of that evolution or a relic of what came before." The silence that followed stretched across the entire fleet as every crew member contemplated what they'd witnessed. They'd come here to exterminate a troublesome young species, and instead found themselves face to face with something that challenged everything they thought they knew about reality itself. Finally, High Admiral Zethkri activated his fleet-wide communications system. "Stand down all weapons. Open a channel to Hegemony Central Command." Marcus allowed himself a small smile as he felt the cosmic probability matrices shifting around them. The conversation that was about to happen would reshape galactic civilization, and for the first time in his enhanced existence, he was certain that humanity's future was secure. The armor had been right. The universe was shifting eternally, and humans had become the agents of that change. What had seemed impossible just hours before was now inevitable. A galaxy where consciousness could reshape reality, where imagination had the force of natural law, where the only limit to growth was the willingness to dream beyond the boundaries of what had always been. As negotiations began between the hegemony and humanity's impossible ambassador, the universe itself seemed to exhale in relief. The long stagnation was over. Evolution had found a new path forward, and nothing would ever be the same. In the depths of space, ancient powers that had slumbered for eons began to stir, drawn by the possibility that reality itself was finally ready to grow beyond its current limitations. The age of human impossibility had begun, and with it, the universe's next great adventure. The armor had fulfilled its purpose, and Marcus Chen had become something unprecedented, the first being in cosmic history to successfully argue with existence itself about what was and wasn't possible. And existence, impressed despite itself, had decided to listen.